Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. And I hope that you're doing wonderful, and I hope that everybody is being nice to you, including the world in general. And I hope that things are just peachy and lovely. Yeah, yeah. What's up, Cryonics? How's it going? Foggage, hello, hello. Ali Briggs, what up? Cave, how's it going? How's things? Hope that all of my friends are doing well and the world is at least not pooping on you, right? What's up, Viscera? Good to see you. How's it going? So, yeah, we are, everybody learn from history and be nice to everybody. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? Like, if we just all figured out, like, hey, we shouldn't be buttholes and we should treat people nice. The world would be better with ice cream. Yeah, it would. I had a milkshake last Sunday. It was rather delicious. It was a cappuccino flavored milkshake, and it was like everything that I wanted it to be. Except for I wanted it to be about 3 times as big, and I wanted 12 of them. It's like you get a little bit of that, and your brain is like, that's nice. They give you some serotonin and some dopamine. And then you're like, ooh, I'd like more of that, please. And you're like, no, it was just a milkshake. It was this big. That's all you got. So the construction of the Argonath continues somewhat frustratingly. Well, that is a big undertaking. And remember that Gondor wasn't built in a day. So it took them the entire life of a king to build those. And that's at the height of Gondor's power. So, it's not going to be easy with just one person doing it by yourself. Krum, I've never prayed to you before. I have no tongue for it, right? You had to go fetch the actual quote, right? Krum is actually a king of the Bulgars, and we'll talk all about him here in just a second. I also find it funny. Not necessarily funny, I guess that's the wrong word. I find it interesting that in the Harry Potter series, the star of the Bulgarian Quidditch team is named Krum. Krum is a pretty important figure in the larger Bulgarian history, and we'll talk about him quite a bit. So, that's just a little bit of what's to come. Hey, what are you doing? We're being joined by the puppy who is lying behind me on the floor here, pouting and chewing on her leg, which she's not supposed to be doing. So, that's what we got. You want to come and see me? You want to come up here? You want to come up here? You want to come up here? We've got to stretch first. You come see me? Come on. Come on. You can go up here. Come on. There you go. There's a puppy. Hello. Oh, thank you for the sugars. Oh my goodness. Hello, Kaylee. What are you doing? Oh my goodness. I scared her today. Is that what you wanted? You just wanted to give me some sugars? No, you want attention. Of course you want attention. Oh, the puppy. She is now perched right here, hoping that I will continue to scratch her back. She's so spoiled. Anyway, my wife was outside in the garden, and the dog was out with my wife in the garden, and they both came in from the garden, and I was standing in the hallway just making like a kind of face, and the dog reacted to that rather violently and just like ran at me full woofing with all of the hair sticking up, and then realized as she got like really close to me, like, oh, that's just the big human, so there's no need to woof at him. What's up, DCI Banks? How's it going, my friend? Your favorite stream? Wow. That's an honor, but also an indication that you might not be hanging out in too many other people's streams. Little self-deprecating humor. Got to keep myself honest and humble, right? Okay, so what's up, Uncle Bill? Good to see you. Good to see you. DCI Banks.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
We'll just fill up the Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm
We'll just do like nothing but Spartacus. Like so many Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I am Spartacus. We'll listen to them all.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
Cheers, my friend.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. That's my favorite one.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
All right. Wow. So many Spartaci. Tropical Geek, Vipers, my lovely wife, 767, and Foggage. There we go. Gift subs from DCI Banks. DCI Banks, thank you so much. That is absolutely appreciated, but as always, never expected. Thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate it. That does make a difference. Though that money goes all back into the stream. And what you may or may not realize is those gift subs are going to enable me to give Allie Briggs money. Allie Briggs art here in the chat is going to work on some emotes for me towards the end of the month. So from your wallet to hers. So there we go. All right, and Allie is just like, yes. Foggage is just continuing to dump points in the Opinion Hat stream. By the way, everybody, I should just shut that down. That's what I should do. I can't cancel it because it refunds everything. That's the whole point. Don't give any more points to the Adventure Hat thing, or to the Opinion Hat. We did that last week. If you just want to burn stuff, I guess you're welcome to burn it, but you don't have to anymore. We did that last week. And if you're wondering where the VOD is, I destroyed it. I killed all the evidence. So I think I need to go back on settings maybe. Did I turn? Yes. Okay. Because last Thursday we did all Opinion Hat stream, and I said dirty words on stream and did cussing and stuff like that. So, yeah, I figured that was probably not something that I needed to save. I just needed to go back and check to see if I'd turned off the mature rating and turned clips back on, because I didn't even want clips from last week. It makes those moments more valuable, right? It was a good time. I appreciated it. We might do more of those in the future if the audience is so inclined. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit more than I thought that I might. And it went very mildly. I was somewhat worried that there would be kerfuffles that broke out because of unadulterated Shane opinion. So I was pleased that it turned out the way that it did. And Uncle Bill missed it all. Maybe that will be something where instead of doing channel points, maybe I does Avad. No, I destroyed all of the evidence. All of the evidence is gone. There is no record that it even happened unless you were there. Like magic, just to quote the warden from Shawshank Redemption, up and vanished like a fart in the wind. What happens in all opinion stays in all opinion. Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that idea. But, you know, again, I had a good time, and it was actually sort of somewhat cathartic to be able to just give the unadulterated opinion. I really probably enjoyed that more than I should. What's up, Lumpy? How's it going? We might do more of those in the future. I don't think I'll be doing them with gigantic, 1 million point redemption things again. But maybe if there's a particular thing that the stream needs, maybe we'll do a donation thing. But I really hate donations. I'm such a bad gift receiver. I'm getting better at it because you all are way too generous, but it's just super awkward. I fidget when I talk, and I'm playing with this little glass thing that I use to shave parts of Gundam models off with. I need to get that out so that I stop, because I fidget. Anyway, let's talk about the Bulgars. What do I do with my hands? Yeah, you could just put them down. When I get involved in something, I'll get more one-tracked and I'll pay attention. But especially when I'm doing small talk, the part of my brain that runs small talk isn't all of my brain, and I end up having all of this sort of extraneous energy to do stuff with, and I will fidget nonstop. But what's crazy is that if I'm watching something, sitting on the couch watching something, I can be perfectly still. I don't know. It's too many free cycles. Proto-Bulgarians. Well, no, I guess we're going to go all the way into what would be considered a Bulgarian. There's going to be some stuff happening, though, that's going to change the way that the Bulgars work. I understand why All Opinion Stream cannot be a concrete part of our shared reality, but it was genuinely a great stream, and it was good to hear your thoughts candidly. Wanted to thank you. Oh, Viscera, thank you. No. I really appreciated it, and I had a better time than I thought that I would. I'm very guarded with my opinion because I know how people react sometimes to my opinion, and my goal, especially here on my stream, is to create an environment that is open and people know that they can talk about stuff, and we can address things that are tough or ambiguous or perhaps sort of taboo in other places, because history is not always pretty, right? History can be very divisive, and I'm very much aware of that. So I always try to be very careful when I talk about stuff, and it was nice to just kind of cut loose. So it was a fun thing. Thank you all for being chill and having a good time in the process. So, all right, let's look at our map real quick, and we're going to pick up again. We're in the 9th century, so this is the year 800 to the year 900, and we're looking basically at this area tonight. So the map here, of course, calls this the Roman Empire, but we all know it as the Byzantines. But we're going to start talking about this zone right here. And if I'm going to be completely honest, I think that this particular map of Bulgaria in the year 800 is rather generous, especially with this section up here. I don't know if I would give them full credit for controlling this region right here. These other sort of Eastern European, Central Asian powers, especially the Magyars, they had a lot of sway in this zone. I don't know if I would give them that, but it's the map that we have, and that's okay. Is that tiny strip of land all that connects in that area? Right here, this is the Bosphorus, and that doesn't actually connect. What's wonderful is that there is a channel of water right here. So this is the European side, and this is the Asians. Well, let me go here to Google Earth full screen. Yeah. So this is Europe, and this is Asia. And this little strip right here of water is called the Bosphorus. And it separates the Mediterranean from the Black Sea. This is the Sea of Marmara. This is what's referred to as the Hellespont. So to get from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, or from the Mediterranean to the Black Sea, you have to sail through this. Now, the reason that this is the way that it is because of a catastrophic event where the Black Sea flooded. So if you look at what we're looking at right here, this portion where the water is the deepest used to be a lake that was fresh water. And then at the end of the last ice age, when there was a massive amount of water, sea level rise because of the melting of the ice caps, the Mediterranean, which also used to be a lake, broke through right here. So the Mediterranean was not always connected to the Atlantic. So this piece of land basically flooded to the point that it broke through and created what is today the Strait of Gibraltar. And then when the Mediterranean flooded, all of this stuff overwhelmed and rose the water level significantly enough to break through right here. And then there was another catastrophic flooding area that created the Black Sea and turned it into a saltwater body of water. And yeah, so somebody asked if this is where the drone was taken out? Yeah, so the drone that went down right about here. And what's interesting about that is this sort of middle portion of the Black Sea is widely considered to be international waters. And the drone location stated that it was here in international waters, but of course Russia, this is the Crimean Peninsula right here. Russia claims this region and has since 2014, and they have extended what they basically want to enforce as a no-fly zone, which stretches well out into international waters. And they attacked the American drone right about here, and it went down. Is the Crimea the home of the Tartars? Now, that's a great question, and the answer can be both yes and no. It depends on what specific type of Tartars you're talking about. This sort of region right around in here, this sort of northern Black Sea coastline, is very frequently referred to as sort of Tartar home. But there's also Tartars that are over here in this region around what is the Ural mountain range, which runs sort of right here. This is in modern day Russia and Central Asia. So this is because the steppe, the sort of broad grassland belt that runs all the way over here from China into Eastern Europe, is a very fluid cultural and ethnic pathway. People migrate in this zone here for tens of thousands of years, even all the way up into the modern times. When Russia itself was forming its empire under people like Catherine the Great or Ivan or Peter or whomever's doing the expansion, there were still people groups that were moving around in this area that were semi-nomadic or more or less fully nomadic, that had to basically get pinned down into zones. That caused a lot of the Russians quite a bit of trouble because they're still horseback people. They're still sort of moving around a lot. They have very primitive culture compared to the level of industrialization that Russia was trying to introduce. They did not necessarily individually identify as Russians or within the larger Russian Empire. And if you look at the way that the Russian states are broken up, you can even tell that right here in this zone, dun, 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 dun. Cine Antics, thank you so much for that follow, and welcome to the adventure. You can tell that this area right here inside of Russia is varied. I mean, look at how small the little states are, and you can sort of see how much this stuff is. Now, when you get up to Siberia, where there aren't people, they get a much larger territory per state. But especially here along this sort of pathway, you're going to see these smaller little polities that are part of the larger Russian Federation. And a lot of these are based on some of these ethnic groups. Like if we zoom in to some of these, you start seeing names that are in stuff that's not necessarily super Russian things. Like Ufa, that's not necessarily super Russian. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. That's a little bit more modern history than it is ancient history, or even the time period that we're talking about. Okay, let me catch up a chat. What's up, KP? Good to see you. You apologize for that already. What, knocking down the end of the last ice age? This has been why this is the way it is with Shane McInnes. You had no idea? Yeah, absolutely. I love that stuff. End of the last ice age was a really formative period of time. It's very, very important to the way that we live our world today. There's still a lot of influence about all of this stuff from even back then, and it also plays into my my Atlantis theory. But you know, international waters as defined by which organization? That's a fair question. Usually the UN, but also international treaty. Have I seen the images of massive flood erosion in the Sahara Desert? Is that evidence of a catastrophic world event? Quite possibly. The situations that we're looking at in the Sahara are based on several different things. Most notably, the fact that the Sahara is not the same size as it used to be back in the ancient world. So if we went back even, 1,000 years ago, the Sahara is substantially smaller back then than it is now. It's actually growing now. We're going through a period of warming. Where the Sahara is getting larger. And if we go back to the end of the last ice age, something around, ish 11,000 or so years ago, well, I guess it would be 13,000 years ago, so it's 11,000 years BC, you're going to see a significantly different shaped Sahara Desert. It's going to be much smaller, especially here in northern Africa. This region was much more fertile. So this would have been very, very green. And of course, the sea levels were significantly lower at that point. So I don't have a problem with the existence of catastrophic world events. The question is what caused them, where were they, and how long did they last? There's a lot of what we might call interest in this kind of global cataclysmic event or catastrophic event theory. And some of it is based on really good archaeology and geology and science. And some of it is based on, man, it would be really great for my theory if this had happened. And those are the ones that we kind of have to watch out for. It's the people that make up a theory and then go looking for the evidence instead of looking at the evidence and coming up with a theory. In those situations, I do tend to pump the brakes quite hard. And I don't necessarily attribute every single claimed existing catastrophe as something that actually happened. But the Sahara region having significant geological and climatological change, I'm pretty much down with that idea. Was the Sahara a rainforest before? So a lot of stuff was way back in time. One of the reasons why the Sahara is so rich in things like fossils is because of what it used to be back in different eras like the Jurassic or Triassic, etc. Go do one of those neat little GIFs where you follow the continents around, because we sort of retro-engineered a lot of the plate tectonic stuff, so you can sort of see where things were in relationship to the equator. So that area used to be tilted a little bit more and moved down. What could have caused such climate change? A lot of stuff. Meteorite impact is one of the leading theories, especially something that was really big, like maybe even a comet impact. That's one of the leading theories that ended at the end of the last ice age. Something really, really big hit the ice caps. And when the ice caps, of course, get hit with this much pressure, it vaporizes all of the stuff and creates a giant steam cloud that goes up into the atmosphere that then causes a whole bunch of stuff like chaotic rain process or really jacked up weather patterns. It also causes a whole bunch of water distribution across the face of the earth, which, flash flooding. There is a fairly credible, I don't know if I can put my whole stamp of approval on it, fairly credible concept that at one point there was a meteorite impact in the Great Plains of America that caused a substantial amount of the Great Plains region of America to burn. This does seem to be backed up by sediment records, especially looking at layers of sediment and then finding these big chunks of like burn area, because you can tell when something burned and it's just black and charred, right? So that does seem to be getting some traction, but I don't know if we found that impact zone yet. But we all know that stuff, like there's a meteorite impact in the Gulf of Mexico right around the Yucatan that wiped out the dinosaurs. That kind of stuff has chaotic and catastrophic potential impact on things like what's above water and what's below water and what the weather patterns look like, etc. So all of these are great questions, by the way. I can talk about that stuff sort of ad nauseum, but we're supposed to be talking about the Bulgars. So let's pick up with them, and we're going to start. Do I believe in the phantom time hypothesis? I don't. The short answer is that I'm not convinced. The long answer is it's really interesting, and I don't know if I can disprove it, but I haven't been sold on it yet. I think that it's probably... there's a difference between likely and happened, or even potential and likely. So I'm somewhere in that realm. I don't think that I believe in it, but maybe. I don't know. Wait, we'll figure it out eventually. What if Charlemagne and the Carolingian dynasty were fabricated? Well, that would have been a really good fabrication, and somebody did some really convincing archaeological work with a time machine, because there's a lot of evidence that Charlemagne was there. We'll actually talk about him, well, not him directly, but his lineage tonight. But first, we're going to start with Krum. Who is Krum? Well, he's this guy. This is King Krum. And he is going to be a very important Bulgarian leader, because he's going to be the guy that sort of starts this whole concept of Bulgarians being a valid empire, in the true sense of we rule more people than just Bulgars. Like, we have expanded, we're taking over people that aren't Bulgarian and we're lapping them into our government, right? The question is, how did he take over? And the answer is, we really don't know. And one of the reasons why we really don't know is that the Bulgars during this whole century aren't going to have a historian of their own. We're going to get most of this stuff from secondhand accounts, either from the Byzantines or from the Western Catholic Church, especially the patriarchy, or not the patriarchy, the papacy. We'll get to that stuff a little bit later. But we don't really know very much about who he was or where he came from. We just know that he's going to be the guy that sort of takes over and then starts doing stuff. Lots of flood stories in ancient cultures, though, so I think it's fair to say that not looking for evidence to back a theory. Well, yeah, sure, but the difference there is, did those flood stories from those ancient civilizations all refer to a specific event that was a global situation, or did they refer to regional events? Because it's fair to say that ancient people lived near water, right? And regardless of where they lived, prior to things like the invention of aqueducts or hydroponic kind of stuff or irrigation, they didn't have dams. They didn't have locks. They couldn't control the flow of the water. So if I'm living next to a river and it rains really hard for a substantial period of time, I get a flood story. If I live on the borders of a lake and everything around me floods and the entire village floods, is that a global catastrophic event, or is that just everybody experiences floods because people live close to the water line? So it's we have flood stories from all sorts of different cultures, but are those flood stories being created contemporaneously even? Like, we have flood stories from Mesopotamia, but do the flood stories from Mesopotamia line up with the flood stories from the Semitic world? No, they don't, because the flood stories from the Semitic world are written, 1,200 years later. So they refer to a big flood that killed a whole bunch of people, but were maybe the Semitic people making their flood story off of the Sumerian flood story, when in fact the Gilgamesh epic was from the old Sumerian period of time, written 2,000 years before people in the Semitic world would have written something about that. That's the kind of stuff you got to look at. So just because everybody has a flood story isn't by itself indicative or evidence that there was some single cataclysmic flood event. Floods are pretty common, and floods in the ancient world are especially common. We end up not feeling that as much today because we have hydrodynamics. We have locks and rivers and dams and levees and stuff like that we've built to control rivers, whereas in the ancient world they didn't. So we had to be a little bit more conservative with our estimates about texts and things like that from the past, all lining up and talking about one definitive specific thing. The Bulgars have an interesting civilization. I think so too. And we're going to get to talking about it, dude. We're going to get on a roll here in a bit, and we're going to talk about all kinds of Bulgar stuff. It would take records to distinguish my town's Great Flood from 250 years ago and your town's Great Flood from 400. So we might conclude it hit everyone at once. That's a fair point, Frank, big time, and welcome in. If we were not a civilization that kept such great calendars, right? We didn't have newspapers that had the date printed on them, if we just wrote about the stories in an encyclical and sent it around, and then we all got wiped out and alien archaeologists came and dug up our village or something in the future, if we didn't have those dates written on everything, it'd be really easy to go, oh man, look at how many floods there are. This just all must be one big flood. Because remember, we don't even have organized calendars in all of these ancient civilizations. We don't have written accounts in a lot of these civilizations. We have stories that began as oral tradition that then got translated across time, perhaps even several thousand years before they ever got written down. And over time, that can have an effect on even how things sound, because you start developing genres. Like there is an ancient genre of cataclysm, right? Where it's like we know how we write about cataclysmic stuff, and it's sort of the trope, right? There's an entire genre in the ancient world for end of the world apocalypse literature, right? If you're going to write an end of the world narrative, there's sort of even an accepted thing, like here's how you do end of the world stuff, here's how you do flood stuff. So it's just a little bit more critical view of some of this stuff, right, is needed. Yeah, absolutely. Moose, we have lots of evidence for the Mesopotamia region flooding really, really frequently. We get that from multiple cultures across thousands of years of history. Are you early or have the clocks gone? We did time change last weekend. Got really excited for a second when you realize it's Krum and not Krum. Yeah. So do you think that flood stories are almost like a scare tactic for control? Not necessarily. I think that it's perfectly legit for flood stories to be real. The question that I have is, what is a ancient person's concept of global or worldwide? If it wiped out every village within walking distance, is that a global flood in the ancient world? Or does it start that way as a story that got told and then over 50 generations turn into a global cataclysmic flood, and then 1,000 years later it gets written down as one that wiped out the entire globe? Maybe so. It's the same big fish story. Like, I caught a fish and it was this big, and then 10 years later the fish was this big and it pulled you out of the boat and all that stuff. That it's the same kind of thing that happens over time. This is how a lot of deities get created. Somebody does something interesting or powerful or scary or weird, and then that gets recorded in history, and then 2,000 years later they end up being a god, right? So same sort of process of humans of embellishing things. The same reason why stuff today happens, like had the biggest crowd ever. It was the biggest crowd at an inauguration ever. It was huge. There's people everywhere. I just can't believe that they showed that picture that showed that there was only like 500 people in the inauguration because it was the fullest the mall has ever been. That kind of stuff happens a lot. A lot. You don't think a worldwide flood is possible. The earth is flat, so it would just pour off the sides. That's a fair point, Vipers, right? Because it can't go up. It has to go out. I'm with you. I'm with you. Flat earth all the way, right? The Flat Earth Society has people all around the globe, right? Anyway, let's actually talk about the Bulgarians. I'm going to have to put the foot down and say no more flood stuff. We got to talk about the Bulgarians. All right, what's up with Krum here? Well, he's a powerful ruler. He's a big deal. And somewhere around 805, he's going to attack this group of people who were also steppe peoples that were called the Avar Khaganate. And he's going to basically wipe out the Avars. And he's going to take all of their territory from them. And that's going to be kind of a big boost because now he's got all this extra land. He's got all this extra territory. He's got all kinds of extra stuff in his world. He's making a lot more money. And he's going to decide, you know what, those Byzantines, they're kind of big for their togas. We're going to go take out the Byzantines. So he's going to actually invade the Byzantine Empire in 807. And the emperors at the time were like, no, that's not going to work. So we're going to go try to fight the Bulgars. But it doesn't work very well. Krum is actually going to end up killing a whole bunch of Byzantine civilians. He's going to end up taking some cities, and this is going to kick off a big old war that stretches for about the next 2 years. This is a Bulgar-Byzantine war. It starts in 811. Now, the Byzantine emperor at the time is this dude named Nicephorus, and he's more or less just a guy that is about to get owned really bad. Nicephorus is going to show up, and he's going to wreck the capital of the Bulgars, and he thinks that he has done his duty. Like, killed the capital. He's going to burn it, and he's going to loot it. Krum doesn't die, though. He doesn't even really get caught. He manages to escape and is going to sort of rally his army. And as the Byzantines have sort of had their victory dance and they're walking out, is going to catch them on the way out of the country. And at this big battle at a place called Pliska, which was the capital, the Byzantines are going to get surprised. The emperor is going to get killed, and his son is going to get wounded so badly that he dies a couple of weeks later. Now, what's interesting about this image of Krum that I showed you is that he's holding this weird-looking bowl thing right here, and if you can tell, it's got this little jaw piece that comes down here because Krum actually takes the emperor of Byzantium, this guy named Nicephorus' head off, and turns his skull into a drinking bowl. Now, how hardcore is that? Emperor Krum, I see that you have a new drinking bowl. Oh, yes, this is the skull of the Byzantine emperor that I killed at the gates of Pliska. Great times. That's pretty rough, right? So the point is, a theory of catastrophic world events changes the way we view such stories and how that shapes our views and everything. Yeah, absolutely. I think I got that in before the end of the floods. That is until the next catastrophic event. Indeed, right. If it wasn't stuck watching on mobile because of downloading something, you'd be playing Age of Empires with all of this. Oh, there we go. Age of Empires is pretty fun stuff. Haven't played any in a while though. Yeah, extra flavoring from the bowl of brains here. Anyway, this of course is going to shock the Byzantine world. The emperor is dead. This barbarian guy that is sort of an upstart has managed to defeat the whole army, and things are just going really, really bad. Krum, though, isn't really going to rule that much longer. He only rules from 803 to 814. But before he's dead, he is going to do quite a bit of building when it comes to sort of the bricks and mortar part of what you would need to make an empire. So first off, he does issue the first sort of pan-Bulgarian legal code, right? How do you make sure that everybody knows that you're the emperor? Well, you pass some laws and you say that you're the emperor and you have to follow these rules. Now, what's really interesting about this is that even this far back, the Bulgarians realized that they had a lot of people that weren't necessarily Bulgarian in their empire. So we've got a multi-ethnic background group, And what's interesting about some of these legal reforms is that Krum sort of recognizes it's worth treating people equally. So in the legal code, it does seem to sort of fall on everybody across the board. There's not like special rules for these kind of people or special rules for those kind of people. Now, I mean, there's rules for nobility, and we'll talk about the social structure a little bit later. But the ethnic groups within the Bulgarian Empire don't really seem to be singled out. And that's pretty neat for the ancient world. You don't see that very frequently. But if we look at Bulgaria, this is what Bulgaria looked like to begin with. Note, and I'll also point out that the map here agrees that the Bulgarians did not originally have this particular port of the country. But Bulgaria around 803 is this darker orange here. This is what Krum would have had when he took over. And all of this lighter orange is what he added to the empire. So again, he's taking out the Avar Khaganate. He's also fighting down here against the Byzantines and taking some of this territory around here. He does end up taking Sofia, which is modern capital. There's a lot of expansion going on. So, by the way, this is the modern capital of Macedonia, not of Bulgaria. But lots of growth, lots of expansion. Now, Skopje is the capital of Macedonia. Sofia is the capital of Bulgaria, right? No. Sofia. Okay. Is that Romania? No, it's the capital of Bulgaria. Yeah, okay. I thought so. For some reason, I start debating myself. I don't know why I do that. Anyway, there we go. So, he's got a big old empire. Big old empire. Borders do change. They do indeed. Krum's an important guy, though, because he's going to set up the groundwork for a lot of other people. Is this a similar period to the Mongols? We are getting towards the Mongols, but they're going to be about 200-ish years away before they really start expanding over all the way in the Asian side of things. It's going to be quite a bit more before they actually start expanding over into the European side of things. So that's going to be closer to the 1200s and 1300s. So we're in the 9th century, which is the year 800 to the year 900. That's what the period of time we're talking about. How's the vegetation in that area of the world? Quite good. There's a lot of good farmland in this area. Quite a bit of good farmland. It's got good rain. It's lots of rivers and lots of good tilled soil, right? There's a lot of stuff going on here. This used to be the zone that was all about the, the Romans, of course, controlled this region, but the Danube runs right here, and the region over here, we talked about the Getae, who used to be up in this region. They, of course, had a lot of territory here in what is modern-day Romania. But we did that in a viewer request a few times ago. Was Bulgar wheat a product? I mean, they grew wheat there, but I don't know if it was specifically a trade product. I'm going to have to say I don't know on that one. I know it was a big important area for trade because this is going to connect sort of the powers of Western Europe over here to the powers of Eastern Europe. So this region right here is very important for trade routes and things like that. Next week, we're going to talk about some stuff that's going on over here that's also going to affect the Bulgarians with stuff like the Principality of Kiev and the Magyars and the Moravians and a lot of other people in this zone. The region right here is filling up. There are people moving into this zone, and it's getting more geographically, politically, economically connected. And there we go. So looking at the next emperor, I'm going to try to make a little bit of time up here. This guy's name is Omertag. He's the next ruler. He rules from 814 to 831. One of the big things that he did was sign a 30-year peace treaty with the Byzantines. This is going to give Bulgaria quite a bit of breathing space because they had a lot of people on their borders that they didn't necessarily get along with very well. people like the Serbians, people like the Croats. Well, I mean, at that point, the Croats are actually doing pretty well with them, but that's about to change just a bit. But giving them a trade group with the Byzantines is going to be nice because that's going to make them quite a bit of money. Moving a little bit forward. Oh, well, I can't actually show you that because we're not even talking about the guy yet. Let's talk about one of their rulers named Presian. He's the next really big important guy. Did the Mongols dine atop their live enemies? I'm sure that they did at one point or another. I don't know if that was a constant thing that they decided to do. The Mongols did a lot of really interesting stuff. We did a viewer request just on the Mongols back right at the beginning of the viewer request thing. I think it might have even been like 3 or 4 or something like that. And I keep all of the old VODs, Cineantics, so if you want to go back in time, you can go to the videos part of my Twitch page, and you can check out the collections and go to viewer requests, and they're all in numerical order, so you can check that out. He looks like a 70s banjo player. Presian, what's up with this guy? Well, he's going to be also very expansionist, and he's going to take a lot more land. He's going to fight with the Serbs. He's also going to fight against the Byzantines. And he's going to start getting port cities on lots of different areas. And this is going to open up, again, quite a bit of trade. He's going to have ports on the Aegean. He's going to have ports on the Adriatic. This is going to, again, sort of position the Bulgarian Empire as a sort of new player in the trade route. Now, this is also going to be interesting because around this time, the Bulgarians...
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Tuna, I'm glad you got the reference, my friend. I don't have a gun. Tuna, thank you so much for the sub, my friend. Hope you're having a good one. Welcome in. Presian is going to make one of the first west-directed trade treaties, or peace treaties rather, with East Francia. So East Francia was part of what used to be Charlemagne's empire. We'll talk about this more in future streams, but when Charlemagne died, he left different parts of his empire to different sons. That's going to end up turning into a big old row, and they're all going to get angry with each other. But one of the countries is going to be referred to as East Francia. And this is a big chunk of territory that had a lot of clout as they had been recognized by the Pope. And the Bulgars are going to start looking westward, which is really interesting. And this is an important moment because this is going to be one of the first times where a country is going to get stuck between Western interest and Eastern interest. And the Byzantines don't like the fact that the Bulgars are sort of cozying up to the Franks because they're supposed to be on the Byzantine side of things. They're supposed to be friends with the Byzantines, not those Western European powers. And that's going to turn into an issue quite a bit. Now, Presian is also going to be notable because he's going to be one of the first of the Bulgarians that manages to successfully pass the throne to his son. Krum didn't even manage to do that. He ended up dying, and then there wasn't a designated heir, and there was a little bit of fighting going on, and that's how Omertag ended up taking over, but that's sort of in the wind at the moment because we're trying to catch back up and make some time. But if we look at the territory here, this is the territory that Presian added, and again, it is very important territory. So again, Presian is going to rule here, 836, 852, and he's adding this, again, yellow stuff. Now, it's important. This is Aegean stuff. Philippi is a really, really big city. Glebnica over here is a connection to the Mediterranean and the Adriatic over here. This is a big deal because they have connections now by land that goes from over here all the way over to the Black Sea. Modern Philippi, yes, is in Greece. I've been there. It's a pretty cool ancient city. Modern city's not so bad. Not as big as it used to be, not as important as it used to be. Ancient city's really, really cool, though. There's a prescient pun here, but it doesn't work in type. Well, you know, if you could have made that joke work, you would have seen it coming, right? Ba-dum-bum, ba-dum-bum. Anyway, so there we go. Lots of cool stuff going on. Now, Presian is going to end up passing the throne to his son, who's going to be Boris the First. Can I get a Seinfeld soundbite? I'm sure I could. Like the little bass line. That'd be fun. I need to... I've been looking at trying to get a Stream Deck, but those are expensive, and I'd rather spend it on stuff like emotes. I've been trying to work with this app that turns the smartphone into a Stream Deck, and I've got that to work, but now it's like, now I've got to learn how to program sounds, which everybody's like, oh, it's just real easy. You just do these 45 steps. And I'm like, where I could do a sound alert. But, you know, there you go. Benny Gesserit humor. You may have just said a certain Sam Jackson phrase out loud. Perhaps. Because I got to the joke before you did. This is Boris the First. Part of his eye is missing and a lot of his art is missing. But this is Boris the First from a document from not too long after he was alive. So this can potentially be considered a fair likeness of him. Good old Boris. Now, what's up with this guy and why is he a big deal? Well, he's actually a really, really big deal. So first off, this is going to be one of the first real open challenges of the Byzantine treaty, right? So we're supposed to be at treaty with the Byzantines if we're Bulgarians, but the Byzantines had started playing multiple sides here. And just to the north and west, right around over in here, there were a group of people called the Serbs. And the Byzantines had effectively... what am I going to try to say here? They basically brought the Serbs into their own camp. And the Bulgarians didn't necessarily care for this very much, because that meant that if the treaty with the Byzantines ever deteriorated, they're going to be stuck between enemies. You got the Byzantines on one side and the Serbs on the other side. So what are we going to do? Well, you're going to try to take on the Serbs. And that doesn't necessarily go very well for our buddy Boris. He actually gets beaten by the Serbs in 853 because of this backing that they had from the Byzantines. And this is going to cause kind of a mess. Specifically here with this connection to the Franks. So... they figure out we need to be nicer to the Byzantines. They're closer, they're right up on us, and we've got a lot more at stake if we tick off the Byzantines. The Franks are a little bit further away. They're not directly bordering us. We don't directly have some sort of territorial boundary with them, so maybe we need to be a little bit nicer to the Byzantines, and maybe we need to, I don't know, try to do something in that direction, maybe north and to the west a little bit. So Boris is going to join into a treaty with the Moravians, who are another group of people that are basically right around this region. And the treaty is going to be to try to attack East Francia. It goes really badly. The Franks are going to respond by making an ally of the Croats, who are going to, or Croats, whichever one you want to refer to, who were sitting right here. It gets multiple lateral things where the Franks are paying the Croats to attack the Bulgars, but the Bulgars are pushing the Moravians to attack the Franks, and the Byzantines are trying to sit this out, and the Serbians are trying to figure out how they're going to get land out of this. It goes really, really bad for Boris, and basically he has to call the white flag out and just goes, look, I screwed up. We need to just We need to call it quits. We need to go back to being friends. And neither the Byzantines or the Franks are necessarily really convinced that Boris is interested in this. So Boris has to sort of make the grand gesture, right? Like, baby, take me back. I promise I'll be faithful forever. And they're like, we don't even like you very much anymore because you're betraying us on one side and then you're betraying the other people on the other side. And it just seems like you're really trying to set up your own world and you're much more interested in running things on your own way. And he's like, well, duh, because I'm an emperor and I want to be my own country and duh. Anyway, what are you going to do if you're Boris? Well, the answer is Christianity. Because it turns out that these big Christian kingdoms that you're being frenemies with don't really like the fact that the Bulgars were still pagan at that point. And Boris is like, you know what? I think I'm just going to convert to Christianity. That'll make some good friends. And when that gets sort of promulgated that he's interested in converting to Christianity, oh man, the Franks and the Byzantines are both like, oh, really? Because they both saw this as an opportunity to sort of win. The Franks and the Byzantines don't like each other, and they haven't liked each other since the very beginning of the 700s, or especially the very beginning of the 800s with Charlemagne and all of that stuff. The Byzantines still claimed territory in the west. They basically still claimed all of the old boundaries of Rome. And the Franks having this big empire over there didn't really sit very well with them. And they are both sort of eyeing Bulgaria as the logical way to expand their roles of influence. So, what is Boris going to do? Well, he's sort of again stuck because by this point, there are sort of Eastern traditions of Christianity and Western traditions of Christianity. Is he going to answer to the Pope in Rome, or is he going to answer to the Patriarch in Constantinople? And this is an interesting question, because which side you side with is going to sort of be the one that you sort of declared allegiance to, because the church, oh man, like if you're going to make treaties and God's going to be involved, those are the big treaties. Like if you're swearing to your pagan gods, the Byzantines and the Franks both are like, who cares? Because you're worshiping idols and stuff like that. It doesn't really matter. But if you're going to swear to God, oh wow, no, that's a different swearing. Well, it looks initially like he's going to side with the Pope in Rome. And so much so that he even sort of invites in some missionaries from Francia. And they're like, yes, we got the Bulgars. And the Byzantines are like, no, we can't let this happen. We can't let them go west. If they go west, that's like, we're screwed, right? We need them on our side. So what the Byzantines are actually going to do is they're going to invade Bulgaria. And the Byzantines are like, no, you will stay on our side, and we're going to make you worship God our way. And Boris is like, how are you going to do that? He's like, we're going to take you over and kill your people. You know, the right way to convert people to your religion. And this is going to basically force Boris's hand. He does end up having to effectively choose the Eastern rites, and he's going to get baptized. And we got this great picture here of him getting baptized. And this is in 864. He gets baptized into the Eastern Rite of Christianity. This plan sounds familiar. Well, I mean, it's a pretty common situation where you get everybody to convert to your version of Christianity, and then you say, well, our leader says this. Don't join the West. I will invade. Yeah. That does sound really familiar. So the moral of the story is that conversion by the sword works. Well, so here's the thing about, well, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but when your emperor converts, you're kind of in a position where you've got to make a decision whether or not you support your emperor. And that's going to cause a big deal. Now, this is actually going to sort of cause a really important moment here where the Western Church gets back involved, and the reason is that Boris wants a autonomous Bulgarian church. He wants an archbishop that's over Bulgaria, and he doesn't necessarily want to be under the leadership of a Byzantine bishop or patriarch. It's like ultimately in communion with, but more our flavor of Christianity. And the Byzantines aren't really interested in giving him that. So he's like, well, I mean, we're already Christian. Maybe we should go to the West, and we're going to look at maybe getting some recognition by the Pope. Is the Pope going to give us our own Bulgarian church? And the Pope is kind of like, I don't know. You guys are kind of new to this, and I don't know if you're ready for your own church yet. Maybe you should kind of hang out. And the Byzantines are like, no, you can't do this. And this causes this big thing called the Phodian Schism, where the patriarch is going to end up going out of communion, and there's going to be this whole split for several years between the East and the West, where the two halves of Christianity basically don't talk to each other. They sort of draw a line of tape down the middle of Bulgaria and say that you stay on your side of the line, we're going to stay on our side of the line. And this is important because this is going to be one of the first really big issues between the Eastern and the Western rites, between the Patriarch of Constantinople and the Bishop of Rome. Now, there had been schisms and arguments in the past, but this is a big, big deal. And this is sort of the first domino that's going to end up falling in the 11th century, where the East and the West just go, we're different churches now. So the rumblings here in Bulgaria with Boris are going to end up being the first steps towards Eastern Orthodox Christianity and Roman Catholic Christianity completely disassociating from each other. And it's because of Bulgaria and who they're going to side with. Well, you can't live forever. Let's be real. Western Orthodoxy has better hats. I don't know, man. Have you ever seen the miters of the Eastern Orthodox patriarchs? Let's see. We've got this guy. Check this out. That's a pretty cool hat. I mean, it's not the gigantic Pope hat, but that's a pretty cool crown looking thing that you got there. Now, typically, you're probably more used to seeing like just sort of like the
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
JMR, thank you so much for that subscription, my friend. 17 months, man. It's been a long, good time. Must see Spartacus. Yeah. How's it going, my friend? Good to see you. That they have equally cool hats. The Pope's is taller, but crowns, they're pretty cool, right? They're pretty cool. So, anyway, Boris decides that he's going to do the good thing and give the throne to his son. He's kind of old, and he's kind of ready to go and do the God thing for a while. He's gonna spend some time with him and Jesus. So he joins a monastery. Now his son's name is Vladimir, and he takes over in 889. And Vladimir decides, you know what? I hate this Christianity thing. We're going to go back to our old gods. This, as you might expect, causes a bit of a stir. And a lot of people get really upset about this. So Boris has to leave the monastery and come out of retirement. And he gets back in charge of a group of soldiers, and he defeats his son in battle. He deposes him from the position of emperor and gouges out his eyeballs as a way of saying, you did this bad, you did this wrong. And in 893, Boris is going to call a council of all of the Bulgarian nobles and go like, okay, look, we got to pick which one of my other sons here. Which son do we go with? And they pick his son Simeon. So Simeon is going to take over He's going to go on to be a really, really important leader. But he stretches into the next century, so we will sort of put a bookmark at 893 with Simeon the Great, and we'll come back to him in a future stream. But this is going to be sort of like the golden age of the Bulgarian Empire, right? He must have been in a blind fury. I bet the eye gouging made Thanksgiving get-togethers real awkward. Pretty much. I would say that probably did not go over very well. Well, I mean, he went back to the monastery anyway, so he wasn't coming to Thanksgiving get-togethers with the family in the first place. So a little bit about Bulgarian culture, because we haven't really talked about them fully and thoroughly yet. As we've mentioned them several times in previous streams, we've mentioned them in reference to attacking different cultures that we've been talking about. But what are they specifically? So if we go all the way back to the beginning of the Bulgar people, they were one of these steppe people. So steppe, they came from the Central Asian steppe, and they're going to be part of a larger group of people that move into the Balkan region over the course of several hundred years, going back to about the 400s and coming all the way through here to the 800s. The division between the left and the right churches could be one big factor. Well, it definitely didn't help. I don't think that the East would have survived anyway, especially with the expansion of the Ottomans. The Ottomans were scary, and they had guns, and nobody else did, and that's just really, really scary. iPuns couldn't get any cornea. Yeah, I see the drums. So they moved out of sort of this larger region over here and down into the Balkan Peninsula. They did have an individual language. It's sort of related to the larger language of things like Slavic languages and Turkic languages, and I know that those two aren't the same groups, but the Bulgars are going to have lots of contacts with Turkic groups and Slavic groups, so they're going to have influences from both of those areas. Their leader, before using the title king or prince, used the title Khan, just like a lot of the other steppe people did. But what's interesting about the Bulgarians, the Bulgars, is that their Khan wasn't considered a universal power leader. He was not just like one person with all of the power. He was more of a sort of first among equals, and there was a group of nobility that were from these big sort of houses of Bulgars. And these sort of royal or noble families all had these really storied lineages, and they all had their own symbols, and they all had their own history. And supposedly the original gods had chosen each one of these families and given them this sort of designation as important and noble. So some of these families were hundreds of years old, going all the way back to the time where they were fully nomadic and stuff like that. But anyway, each one of these big families got to put people into this sort of council that is going to more or less advise the king or the Khan. And it does even seem that they could depose the Khan. So if you're a crappy leader, you could get effectively impeached. So that's a really interesting mechanism for something that far back in the world, where you have a leader where other groups that had the title Khan, these people were sort of, monolithic powerhouses where they could do whatever they want to. But in the Bulgar world, you couldn't. You were sort of expected to rule with the consent of the people. And if so desired, the people could even get rid of you, right? Vladimir, yeah. With no eyes. I see it. I got you. That was a good one, Frank Big Time. That's a very subtle. I appreciate that one. Didn't the Byzantine Empire last until the Ottomans took them over? Yes. So the Byzantines fell in 1453 under a guy. So the Ottomans that were attacking them were led by a dude named Mehmet the Conqueror, Mehmet II, in 1453. And they had these giant cannons that were shooting boulders at the walls, and it's kind of hard to hold your walls up if you're getting shot at them with giant friggin' cannons. So that's what ended up happening. The last of the Paleologi. ruling family of Byzantines at that time was the Paleologus family. Shane knows lots of history. Anyway, weren't the cannons invented by Byzantine? No. Cannons were invented by the Chinese way back before that. Maybe the specific. Are you talking about like the specific kind of cannons that they were using? Maybe, but I don't know that story. Not saying that I don't. That's not okay. I'm not saying that isn't the case. What I'm saying is I don't know if it's the case or not. The big wallbuster ones. I'm pretty sure that those had been used in other places because the Ottomans had taken over lots of other places. Now, it might have been some slave that was a Christian. That was quite frequent because the Ottomans definitely took Christian engineers and made them slaves. So maybe that's it. I just don't know the specifics there. I could be completely wrong. It's possible. I'm a fallible human being. All right. Over the time that we're talking about in the Bulgarian Empire, the role of the People's Council does seem to be somewhat limited as these powerful emperors are going to begin to centralize power. We do have a couple of instances where it seems like some of these emperors kicked out the heads of some of these noble families and put other ones in charge of some of these noble families. So it does seem like there was a little bit more politicking going on as the empire grew and became more powerful and rich, which is not necessarily very surprising. They had a somewhat cosmopolitan position in especially their big cities because they're going to have access again to these big trade routes that are going to connect Asia to Europe, from southern Europe to northern Europe, and they're kind of sitting at that nice big crossroads here in the Balkans, and they've got a really influential position. So they can trade over here, they can trade over here, down in here, and they kind of connect all of these people together. You think the cannon designer for the siege was Hungarian. Interesting. What's up, Other Lockwood? How's it going? Welcome to the chat. Appreciate your input. And please feel free to participate at whatever level you feel interested and comfortable with. We're pretty open here. Have a good time. Do your thing. Good to see you. All right. What about this pre-Christian religion, right? So they did have a bit of a mix of religions in the region prior to converting to Christianity. They did have some people that were following Slavic gods. The identity here between Bulgar and Slav during this period of time starts to blur a little bit. Now, part of this is because of the amount of contact that they had had over time, and also part of this is the expansion of the Bulgar Empire under people like Presian and people like Krum are going to bring more Slavic people into the Bulgarian world. So the question is, did the expansion bring in the Slavic gods, or was the Slavic god pantheon already there and they just became more prominent as it expanded? It's probably a little bit of both. Now, if we go way back in time, the Bulgars were actually a monotheistic religion that followed, well, their particular word that they called their god is Tangra. But this is, in the modern world, referred to as Tengri, and it was a very common religion in, again, this steppe region of the world. Now, people were asking about the Mongols. Early in the Mongolian expansion, like Genghis Khan, his original religion was Tengrism. They worshipped this sky god called Tengri, who was the only god that really mattered. You didn't necessarily have to worship him very much because he was sort of like, anything that you try to do is going to be using stuff that I've created anyway. So, I mean, you can build me a temple, but it doesn't really mean very much to me because I made the stuff that you're making the temple out of. Tengri is a really interesting god, and Tengrism is a really interesting religion. Note about that, it's actually becoming more popular in the world today, especially in Mongolia among younger people. There is a push back towards Mongolian identity. And this is a little bit as Mongolia pushes away a little bit of the Chinese identity that had taken over a lot of it during the sort of height of the Cold War, when Mongolia was one of the sort of, centerpieces of communism in Asia. So there's a growth in Tengrism in Mongolia today. It's a really interesting revival of an old religion. But the Bulgarian reference, again, is Tongra, but Tongra is Tengri. It's just different vowels. But there was a lot of this monotheism in Bulgaria, so that's really interesting. During this time period, they're also going to develop their own written language. And this is going to be the first time that the Bulgarians put a written language or written alphabet to their old Bulgarian language. So this is an important note because Boris, the big king who Christianized the Bulgarians, wanted to do this for a specific reason because, again, he was pushing for this concept of an autonomous Bulgarian church. And one of the things that he wanted to be able to translate documents into Bulgarian. But if you don't have a written language to do that, you can't. But during his reign, he's going to get a lot of people involved in this, and they're going to basically craft the letters that turns into the Bulgarian language. And they're going to start doing stuff like liturgy in their churches in Bulgarian instead of in Latin or in Greek. Because, again, he's pushing for this unique Bulgarian identity, and he was wise enough to understand that language goes a long way into identity, so you're going to get the development of the Bulgarian written language. The kids saw Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and saw how awesome their ancestors were. Maybe? There's a Mongolian metal band called the Tengri. Yeah. There you go. There's another Tengri, right? Added a link to stream chat for you to read later. Cool, Tuna. Thanks. I will do my best to get to it. So those are the Bulgars, and they're a pretty cool group of people, and we'll come back and talk about them many more times throughout the course of the future episodes. We haven't really hit the height of the Bulgarian Empire yet. That'll be probably next stream and a little bit of the following stream. They've got a pretty good run of things, historically speaking, and I really like talking about them because, again, this is a group that doesn't get a lot of love in the old Western history stuff that we talk about. All right, now let's switch over to talking about the Byzantines. Now, Byzantine Empire, of course, Eastern Rome, whatever you want to call it. They called themselves the Romans. We'll call them the Byzantines because there's a substantial change between then and now. But what we got going on over there? Well, we're going to start with this guy. This guy's Leo V. Now, he's a pretty cool looking dude, I guess, but he causes a bit of a mess, and there's a reason for that. Now, if you were with us the last time we talked about Byzantines, so this is Leo V, you might remember a movement called iconoclasm, where people decided, we don't like images in our churches, and we should destroy all of them. And it had gone for several decades, and it had then been shut down. Well, Leo was the emperor when the Bulgarians were beating up so much on the Byzantines. And Leo was trying to figure out a reason, like, why is God punishing us? These pagans are coming into our territory, they're taking our cities, they're killing our people. And he comes up with the answer. You know what? God is punishing us because we went back to using icons. So he's going to revive iconoclasm. We're going to bring it back. We're going to redestroy all of the icons. And this does not go over well. He's ruling from 813 to 820. He doesn't get a lot of friends for this. There were way more people that were pro-icon than anti-icon, and he's not going to make it out alive. Now, of all of the assassination stories that we have shared here on Adventures in History, this is one of my favorites. Because it's described in a lot of detail in the historical sources, and it's I mean, he's going to get assassinated, but the story is kind of great. So he is going to revive iconoclasm. A lot of people get really, really upset about this. And the response is that some people are going to start speaking openly against him. Openly against him. Including one of his big generals and one of this guy that's sort of in the leadership. Anyway, this guy named Michael. And he's going to end up putting Michael in jail. And when he does this, Michael's like, we got to kill him. We got to kill him. So how do you do this? Well, Michael organized this plot from jail. So this is like, the mafia boss running the show from the penitentiary. And it goes like this. On Christmas Eve, some assassins sneak into the church where he's going to take Christmas Mass. And they're dressed up like choir singers. So they've got the choir robes on, and under the choir robes, they have their weapons. And the plot is, when he comes up to take Mass, we're going to throw off the choir robes and just stab this guy to death. Well, it's kind of dark in the church, and Leo comes up to the altar, and he's got some other people with him, and the assassins throw off their choir robes, and they're like, die! But they kind of mix up who's the emperor because of the lighting, and their initial bomb rush doesn't end up taking him out. And so Leo is going to get to the altarpiece, and he's going to pick up this really big, heavy wooden cross. And he's going to use it as a weapon to try to fight off these assassins. So he's literally beating them with a cross, which is just this horrible, funny image. It's horrible and funny at the same time. But anyway, they're eventually going to... he gets +5 with Divine Smite while wielding the cross, right? So he ends up bludgeoning some of them, and they end up getting him surrounded, and they chop his arm off, of course causing him then to drop the big cross, and they end up kind of killing him at the altar, which is really weird. And then they don't just kill him, they decide we should chop his body up. So they dismember him, and they take his various parts out of the church and sort of throw him into the street where it was snowing. And they don't give him a proper burial. So this is how Leo V ends up getting killed. It's just a really bizarre scenario. It's simultaneously amazing as a story and horrible when you think about it. This is all happening in the church. In the church, they were dressed up as choir members to get close enough to him to kill him. It's a nasty situation. Very Game of Thrones-ish. It is very much Game of Thrones-ish. Now, the guy who is orchestrating all of this, again, his name is Michael. After they've killed Leo and chopped him into pieces and thrown his body into the snowy street, that the scene is in the next John Wick movie. Like the Vikings when they took a cop. Right. Not as bad as the Blood Eagle, though, right? Anyway, so the assassins, after carrying out this plot, go into the dungeon and get Michael out of the dungeon, and they have to fight their way in, and they end up killing one of the guards. And Michael goes, I need to be crowned. We need to go ahead and do the coronation thing, because if we give the people enough time to respond. Leo's probably going to end up with a family member or something, trying to claim the throne. I need to be coordinated right now. And they're like, okay, cool. Let's get you out of these chains because he's in manacles, right? And they can't find the key. So they're digging around trying to figure out where the key is and who's got the key to these manacles. And Michael is just like, just put the friggin' crown on my head. Let's get a priest. Let's go through this junk. And he actually gets coronated as emperor while he's still in chains. And this sort of is just a really weird picture of how the rest of his life is going to end up. Because he's not going to be a particularly good emperor. It's just the assassin's first day, right? Anyway, Michael II goes on to do a lot of stuff that just doesn't sit very well with a lot of people. There had been a lot of monks that were exiled, and these are monks who were supporting the use of icons. Everybody thinks that when Michael takes over, he's going to end up bringing icons back. That's not the case. He ends up upholding iconoclasm. And a lot of these monks that had been kicked out made a big stir, and he ends up, because of the gruesome situation that he was in, he ends up having to let some of them come back because he's trying to appease the people. So he makes some gestures like, I don't like icons, but, if some of these people that got exiled because they like icons want to come back, maybe we can work on that. The patriarch of Constantinople had been exiled, and he brings him back, and he starts trying to make some peace, and it doesn't really go very well overall. It's kind of a messy situation. Iconoclasm is going to finally be brought to an end under the reign of Empress Theodora, who is this lady right here. Her husband, named Theophanes, was emperor for quite some time. She's going to take over as regent for her son. But what's really interesting here, this is her by herself, Theodora, on the sort of the ruling side of the coin. And then here's two of her kids. This right here is her daughter, Thecla. And this is her son, who is theoretically the emperor. But here you have large, powerful woman, larger, powerful sister, and then the emperor, who's kind of just tagged on here. You can get some real good information from looking at this coin, right? She's not a cat. Can we do a history of Malta? We couldn't do all of Malta in one stream. We would have to break that down to a specific time period. Usually when we do viewer request streams, I say that about the maximum amount of time that we can do in one stream logistically is somewhere around 400 years. And that is pushing it in some situations. Malta has a history that goes back to the prehistoric times and goes all the way through, like World War II. And that's way too much time to put into one stream, right? Pretty sure that's Bulgarian for meow. Well, she's a Byzantine ruler, right? Anyway, so Theodora is finally going to end iconoclasm, and this is a happy moment because everybody's like, I really like my pictures in church. The issue with Theodora is that the military didn't really listen to her very well, and they ended up losing a lot of land under her rule. They lost Crete, they lost part of the island of Sicily. The Byzantines aren't doing so great foreign policy-wise under Theodora. Now, that is going to change a little bit under the next guy, who is a guy named Michael III, who is this guy. And I guess I should be wearing the adventure hat. This is one of my pictures. This is Michael III. He is the first ruler in what we call the Macedonian dynasty. Now, Macedonian dynasty is going to be really important because this is going to mark the beginning of a Byzantine revival. This ruling group is going to cause a lot of things to change in the Byzantine world, and this guy is going to be part of that. I guess Theodora thought she was God's gift to the Byzantines. Well, you know, there we go. Well, yeah, I should put the adventure hat on. I usually just put it on when I take a picture and I get to show one of my pictures. Yeah, so that's my picture that I took. If you want to know where that came from, let me do a little bit. So the adventure hat here is sort of the go-to item that I bring with me. When I go on travels, I bring the adventure hat. I sunburn really easily, so I need something that covers my head and my ears and part of my face. This has been to 3 different continents, 10 different countries. I love it. I would cry if I lost it. It's my special boy. Now, when you summon the adventure hat, typically what happens is I tell a story of a specific time that I was doing some sort of adventure thing. But if you are interested, what I can do in lieu of a story per se is I can show you the collection that this particular photo came from. And we can do this kind of quickly. Starting here. All right, so the photo that I just took is from the Istanbul Archaeological Museum, which is a really cool place. But they have one of the most extensive coin collections in the ancient world. So when I was there last year, I took a whole bunch of coin pictures. So here are, and this coin collection, by the way, goes all the way back to the 5th century BC, and I've even got some older than that. I have pictures of the first coins. If we go way on back, well, here, let me do this. Boop, 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 doo. Nope, not those. They're tiny little buttons. Yep, there we go. These are the oldest coins that we know of from a kingdom of Lydia, which was in Turkey back around the 610 to 560 BCE range. So these are some of the oldest coins on Earth that have ever existed. They have an extensive numismatic collection. It is one of the biggest groups of coins that I've ever seen in my life. So I took a crap ton of pictures of coins, and you can see here, I just took a bunch of pictures of coins, a bunch of them. And what's really interesting here is they have this collection that's just the Roman emperors in order. So Augustus, Tiberius, they have as many examples of the coins of those people that exist. So I have just about every Roman emperor's coin pictured, and I use them extensively here on stream. So when I show a picture of a coin, it's because I've seen it, and I've taken pictures of it. And I have a lot of them. A lot of them. A lot of them. A lot of them. So many coins. So many coins. Da 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 da. Okay, so here's the 700s. Breaking into the 800s. Here's Michael II. We talked about him a little bit. I don't know why I didn't actually get a picture of him coin-wise. There's Michael II with his son Constantine as a co-ruler. They don't actually have a picture of Leo V, which is really interesting, and I don't know why. So Theophilus here is the guy that was the husband. What did I do right there? Go forward again. This guy was the husband of Dadgummit, go back. Zoom in. Move over. This guy was Theodore's husband, and he was a emperor from 829 to 842. There's a bunch of coins of Basil. Basil the First. We're about to talk about him. This guy, and then these coins, and Leo will talk about him at the end of the term. But they pick over with the Byzantines, and they go with the Byzantines all the way through until pretty much the end of the Byzantine world. I wonder if there's a Leo the... Okay, well, I guess that's all of them there. What's the last Byzantine one that we have? Isaac II. That's 1195. Yeah, okay, so... I've got coin pictures all the way up for another 300 years almost. So, there we go. You can see the change in these pictures. Really makes the story feel more physical, right? Maybe he thought getting stamped on a coin was too much like an icon. Maybe so. Maybe so. Anyway, I hope that was worth the redemption. I have, and I'm not joking here, thousands of photos of things that I've seen when I travel. I take probably what might be considered too many pictures. But I use them for stuff like this because it's cool, right? Anyway, Michael III, he's got some military setbacks at the beginning, but he's got some wins too. Michael III starts kind of changing stuff. He's going to win a couple of battles against the Bulgars. He's going to take back some of the cities that they had lost. He's also going to have some military success against the Abbasids. Now, part of that is because the Abbasids are falling apart, and it's really easy to beat up on people when they're already down. He's also going to start making some expansion in the Greek world, over in Greece. And this is part of a sort of a proto-Renaissance movement. Now, what do I mean when I even say that? One of the things that happens under this Macedonian dynasty that starts under Michael III is this movement back towards sort of this Greek ideal. And there's going to be a lot of Greek culture that sort of gets revived during this period of time. There's going to be a lot of old Greek documents that go back into transcription and get respread back around. They're going to shift back to using Greek language even in official documentation. So Latin during this period of time is going to start phasing itself out, and you're not going to see very much written in Latin anymore. They're going to really embrace this concept of Greek heritage, and it's going to be really influential. Part of this is because of, again, we've got to sort of find out who we are again. We're in a world that's shifted a whole lot. We've lost a lot of our territory. We've got new enemies on the borders. We don't really know how do we relate to these people. If we're going to have our version of the church, what is our version of the church based on? So there's this sort of ideological movement that happens for about the next 150 to 200 years in the Byzantine world, where they're trying to figure out who they were, and they end up going back to the Greek ideology. This is a revival of Greek philosophy. This is a revival of the Greek language and literature, and a real embracing of this sort of Macedonian heritage. And there's some sort of massaging of historical fact to create some through lines that show like, oh, we're still the people that we always have been, even though they're not. But we kind of get this idea. Now, this is going to end up influencing the Renaissance that happens over in Europe several hundred years later, because when they get to the Byzantine world, the Byzantines are going to still have all of these things in circulation. They're still going to have all of these Greek classics. They're going to have this Greek culture that they've sort of reestablished and rebuilt and sort of done in their own flavor. So this is an important movement. Now, Michael II ends up making some dumb decisions. And one of them is that... Well, it's going to come down to the fact that his wife and he can't have kids, right? If you're an emperor and you can't have kids, that's a problem, because you want to establish a dynasty, right? Everybody wants to sit in a dynasty. Well, as an emperor, it's very hard for you to divorce a wife because you're supposed to be the head of the church. This looks bad. Divorce is not really a big positive thing in Christianity. You're just not supposed to do it. So he's got a mistress, and he wants to be around his mistress more than he wants to be around his wife because he's still kind of hoping, like, maybe I can have a kid and then I can sort of adopt this kid as legitimate. But he can't just always have this woman walking around the palace without, people starting to ask questions. So he goes to his chamberlain, and his chamberlain is this guy named Basil. And he goes, "Hey, Basil, I've got this idea." And then he realized that it was him and that he was the problem. He probably was the problem, but he's not going to be around for much longer, Allie, so don't worry about it. He's going to go to Basil, and he's like, "Okay, check this out. I need you to marry my mistress." And Basil's like, "What the heck? You want me to marry somebody, and then I'm not supposed to be with them? What up, Moose? How's it going? Oh, you've been here. You're waving at Allie, and you're asking. Okay, cool. I'm sorry. I apologize. I was like, but Moose, you've been here. So I'm going to marry my chamberlain to my mistress." And then Basil's like, "But I have a wife then, but I'm not even supposed to have sex with her?" And Basil's like, no. Here's what I'm sorry. Michael says, "Here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to call my sister back from exile," because that whole family situation was a big mess. "I'm going to call my sister back from exile, and you're going to get to have my sister as your mistress. So I'm not going to sleep with my wife. You're not going to sleep with your wife. We're both going to sleep with our mistresses. And that's how we're going to be able to get my mistress into the palace, because my chamberlain lives here. His wife would have to live here. Then nobody can ask questions about my mistress walking around the palace because she's supposed to be here." You know how this is going to go. It doesn't go well. Surprise. Basil ends up having quite a bit of leverage, as you might expect, over Michael when this whole thing goes down. And he basically blackmails Michael into making him co-emperor. And Michael can't really do anything about it. Yeah, what are you going to do? I would actually like to have a family with my wife, and I'm going to make sure that everybody knows that you're sleeping with my wife, and that's not going to be good. And Michael's like, "But..." Anyway, so you thought triangles are complicated, right? This is like a pentagon. Anyway, Basil ends up being co-emperor. And Michael then decides, I got to get rid of Basil. This guy's a jerk. And if I can just kill him, then I can keep his wife here as a ward, a.k.a. my mistress. Anyway, but Basil's like, I got to kill this guy, Michael. He's going to end up trying to kill me. So they both end up with these ideas to kill each other. And who's going to win? Well, Basil gets Michael really, really drunk one night. And then Michael gets so drunk that he blacks out and passes out. And while he's blackout drunk, Basil gets some of the guards to go kill him. So Michael gets the old assassin and is dead. But this means that Basil is now the emperor. Because he was co-emperor and the other emperor died. Now he's emperor. Surprise. No one connected. Yeah, exactly. The assassins win, pretty much. I guess it was just Basil's time. This is all because of the bad optics of getting coronated in shackles, right? Well, that's a different Michael. That was Michael II. This was Michael III. And I understand how that was a sort of a crazy transition there. Anyway, this is Basil. Here's Basil's coin. Here he is, being a good leader. Look at me. I'm nice and Christian. I certainly didn't have the last guy killed after I got him massively drunk and blacked out. For the rest of the century, though, the Byzantines are going to have a little bit of luck, right? They're going to end up reclaiming some territory. Basil's going to end up leading some military stuff over here and taking over parts of South Italy. This had been Byzantine territory for quite some time prior to about 200 years before this, and they lost all that area, but they reclaimed some of this stuff. They are going to manage to hold on to some of Sicily. They're going to sort of firm up their control here in the central part of what is modern-day Greece. And they're going to start expanding a little bit. They've got sort of a swing back up towards the positive, and that's kind of okay for them. Now, what about culturally speaking? Is there anything particularly interesting going on culturally speaking? Yeah, kind of. One of the things that ends up happening during this period of time is a really interesting social shift. Women are going to end up being isolated more socially. They're going to be parts of the city or parts of cities where women just aren't supposed to go. So you start getting a lot of gender discrimination in public, and just in general, women's roles in society are going to start being curtailed quite a bit during this period of time. And it's really interesting that happens right around the same time that this sort of growth of ideas is going to coincide. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it does start happening. Women are expected to sort of start covering their faces and wearing veils even. A lot of people want to point to the way that the Muslim world was treating women and saying, oh, this is just rubbing off on the Byzantines. It doesn't really seem to be that case, though. It just seems like the Byzantines just get more prudish for some reason, and women just aren't supposed to be seen, and they're supposed to stay in their designated parts of the city, and it's just really weird. So that starts happening. And also, the Byzantines are going to sort of perfect what becomes known as like Byzantine architecture. And this is a church here on the island of Cyprus. This is the Church of St. Lazarus at Larnaca, and is sort of broadly considered to be kind of the type set example of what Byzantine architecture is going to look like. So you have your sort of rounded arches in these sort of compact, chunky styles, and you have these, well, this is added a little bit later. This is not original to it. The tower is original, but this decoration up here is a little bit later on. But the stuff with like the rounded apses that stick out have your nice little windows there, your little rosettes things, these sort of rounded barrel arches that go down the length of the church. This is the kind of stuff that you're going to see very, very frequently in Byzantine architecture. Was that your Hank Hill voice when you were talking about increasing sexism? I was expecting you to follow Hassel sexism. That wasn't a Hank Hill impersonation on purpose. It may have been one just by chance. But that is the Byzantine and the Bulgarian world in the 800s. And I hope that got you some interesting nuggets of wisdom. And I hope that puts you in the good kind of historical feeling where you go, oh man, I learned something. And I'm going to use that in bar trivia one day and end up winning something. Or whatever. I don't know. We got a side trek and we looked at all kinds of cool coins. Here we go. You didn't even think of bar trivia. I'm pretty good at bar trivia. The last time that I played bar trivia, I think I answered almost all of the questions for my group. I did get one of them wrong that cost us the game. We bet too much on the last question, and I thought that the Segway personal transportation device came out after the Motorola Razr, and I was wrong. So I do admit that I was wrong, and my team lost because I said I'm definitely right, and we should bet all of the points. So I can't see how I will use it, but I enjoyed it very much. There we go, Frank. At least that's the thing. If you had a good time and you enjoyed yourself, there we go. You did trivia for a few months, but it felt like most of it was all about bands or TV shows that you didn't like. That's true. That happens quite a bit. quite a bit. Let's see who we're going to go raid. Who's around to raid? Dude, Skittle is still streaming. Holy moly. He's been streaming for a heck of a long time.
Where I live and where I know.
Who else is streaming? Dude, Skittle's been streaming almost 6 hours. Good gracious. What's in the news? Is there something going on for long streams? I don't know. Credit Suisse. Okay. Yeah, the banking stuff. Okay. All right. Credit Suisse is a big old bank, and it's been screwed up since 2008. If we're just being real and we're just being honest. They had a lot of chicanerous and deplorable activity in the last financial meltdown, and they have not really been on good terms since then. Now, people have considered them stable, and they've gone through stress testing, and they've gone through a whole bunch of FDIC stuff, and everybody says that they're okay, but they're clearly not okay. Part of that is because they... Okay, so Dodd-Frank as a bill was a bad bill. It did a lot of stuff that looked good on the surface, and under the surface, it actually made things a little bit worse. Now, of course, this is not as bad as repealing Glass-Steagall, which happened in the 90s. That's what opened the whole door to the mixing once again of the investment banking and the consumer banking, where you can put your money in the bank and the bank can go play around with that in the stock market if they want to. That's what ended up causing a lot of the chaos in 2008. Of course, also there was the bond issues where you're bundling bad bonds with good bonds and hoping that the bad bonds wouldn't fall apart, and that's what caused the housing bubble crisis. But what has caused this most recent issue with SVB and the other banks that have caused trouble in the last week or so is something that came out of the Trump administration right around the time that we went into lockdown because of COVID. So in March of 2020, the federal government basically passed a bill that overhauled, the FDIC did this. So this Federal Deposit Insurance Commission, they're the ones that are set up to watch out for banks collapsing. They're the ones that offer insurance of up to $250,000 for individual banks. If you do collapse, you can get that much back. It's backed by the federal government. Well, as COVID set in and the world went into lockdown, one of the things that the FDIC did was basically unshackle the banks to allow them to do unrestrained lending. Now, prior to March 15th, 2020, the FDIC said you can only loan a certain amount of the money that you have in the bank, right? So if you've got $100, you can only loan about 65, 70 of those dollars out. And you've got to keep that $35 in reserve in case somebody wants their money back. You can't loan out 100% of your deposit. But in March 15th, 2020, the FDIC said, keep the economy going, lend it all. And the banks did. They lent up to 100% of the money that they had in their accounts. And this is also because interest rates were really low. People were getting loans left and right. And this, of course, is going to play into the tech sector because tech companies were growing out of this really broadly. You have all these new companies that are showing up that are going to be the next big things. So banks like SVB and Safeguard and all these other banks that have since been bailed out by the government, including Credit Suisse, are doing stuff that is, if we're just being honest, dangerous. It's just dangerous. And when we got out of the pandemic height and we got out of lockdown, it would have been wise for the FDIC to go, okay, you need to start reeling that back in. But the economy was going bad, right? The economy was potentially going to enter a recession. So even after the Biden administration took over, they didn't lean on the FDIC to make them reel back their loaning. So a lot of these banks were still loaning 100% of the money that they had in deposit. And when one bank starts to go a little bit messy, like SVB did, this is going to cause a potential chain reaction. Now, it should be noted that SVB is not what we would consider the average consumer bank. About 90% of the accounts that they had on file were over $250,000. So these are big accounts that are being used mostly as venture capital funds or as tech startup funds and stuff like that for big businesses. The reason that Credit Suisse got involved in this is because a lot of these companies are international, and they got into the game too thinking we can make a lot of money really, really quick off the tech sector, because, you know, this is what happens when everybody switches to remote work, and these new companies are going to fill in these new gaps in the job force, and all of this new stuff is going to just spit out and change the world really, really fast. The idea here, though, is they were loaning more money than they could. They couldn't cover the people that were taking money out, and that's why they failed. And Credit Suisse is just in a position where they didn't have a wide enough diversification of funds in order to back a lot of their withdrawals, and they're in trouble right now because of that. So there's just a lot of mess going on with this bank stuff right now. And for those of you that had no idea that I was going to go on a 5-minute rant about banking regulations, that kind of came out of nowhere, and I'm sorry, I guess, but it was asked about. So I hope that answered your question, Tuna. It's just a big mess because of lack of regulation, especially on banks that had already proven to be less than above board when it comes to doing things ethically and legally speaking. I guess technically it's not illegal if the FDIC says it's legal, though, so I guess we'll have to do that as a subline. I don't know if there's something going on with long streams. Credit Suisse stated that they're buying back their own securities with bailout money. Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the things that they get to do, right? Because it's the bailout funds that have been offered to them by the government are basically unrestrained, right? I'm starting to think that the reason your stream is PG and you don't have a stream deck with sounds on it is that you'd wear out the key that says it was at the moment we knew he'd screwed up. Pretty much, right? Banks doing scummy things? Never. What's up, Noger? Good to see you, man. The hook being the value has dropped up to 80% of value. Well, see, that's the thing. Like, when your stock goes down and you're losing interest from depositors, how do you buy back your own security when your own security is insecure? It creates this vicious feedback loop where you're going to suck government funds in to keep yourself afloat, but you can't keep yourself afloat because the government's not going to give you all the money forever. And when you eventually have to stand on your own, you don't have it because nobody trusts you anymore. If you haven't watched or read The Big Short, it looks like the 2008 collapse in this. I know what The Big Short is, and I've seen the movie. This feels similar but different. It's the same sort of thing where banks did stuff that was really, really risky when they knew that they shouldn't have, and then they got bit by it. That's the similarity. The actual practice of what was happening between the bundling of subprime mortgages and the investment banking that was going on that caused SVB to collapse, it's very, very different. Well, yeah, so the issue there is that that makes them soluble as a company, but that kills their trust value. Nobody is going to go to work for them. They're going to end up losing money in the long term because of their lack of trust. People just don't want to put their money, especially big money, in a position where the bank has proven now multiple times to be run by people that are more interested in creating bank profit than preserving depositor finance, right? Like if you show this to people enough times, they're going to start believing you. And I wouldn't put my money in Credit Suisse right now. But I understand why the Swiss government's bailing them out, because it's a big deal for them. They're still one of the places where people put their money because of the attraction of having money in Switzerland, right? But if you know that the bank there sucks, you're going to move your money to somewhere like the Bahamas. Well, the Saudi government owns a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't think about. And anyway, that's the Saudis. If anybody has any additional questions or stuff, now is the time. Otherwise, we're about to go do a raid. I get to teach tomorrow for 3 hours, and then I get a week off because next week is spring break for me. It's going to be a good time. I'm going to sit on my I'm going to paint. I'm going to try to sit on my butt as much as possible. We'll see how much that actually accomplishes. All right, we're going to go raid a blue Skittle because he's been on for like almost 6 hours now, and that's just impressive by itself. Also, Skittle's pretty cool. He does great art and is a very chill person, and have a good time over there. So when we get to Skittle's world, yell adventure when you have a chance to type. If you have those wonderful adventure hat emotes, you can throw those in chat as well. That would be greatly appreciated. The next time I'm definitely going to schedule is Tuesday. We'll do a viewer request stream. And then we'll come back next Thursday. That's the plan. I'm hopefully get some Gundam stuff in over the weekend, maybe even Monday. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But until then, everybody, have a good one. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time. Bye.